format din mai multe cifre pe care le-ați primit la intrare, care cred că va fi afișat și pe ecran. Pentru că vrem să aflăm comentariile, să vă aflăm întrebările și, evident, vrem să și votați în momentul în care o să vă supunem atenției câteva chestiuni, întrebări legate de Uniunea Europeană. Temele dialogului se referă la tineret, patrimoniu cultural, rolul în dezvoltarea economică și socială și viitorul Europei. Aveți pe ecran așadar, vedeți aplicația Slide 2 și codul. Dacă vă rog să vă conectați, pentru că aș vrea să facem un test, să vă supun atenție o primă întrebare. Întrebarea sună așa: în care din următoarele domenii crezi că tehnologia va avea cel mai mare impact în Europa? Sănătate, educație, finanțe, infracționalitate, migrație, ocuparea forței de muncă, crearea de locuri de muncă, protecție socială, viață publică. Da. Se schimbă proporțiile. Da, educație, un răspuns de așteptat, pentru că avem dialogul cu comisarul european Navracici, care răspunde de educație, cultură, tineret și sport. Îl invit acum pe domnul comisar Navracici să ni se alăture în acordurile și pe imaginile clipului de prezentare care detaliază conceptul acestui dialog cu cetățenii.
Society is complex. Our problems are very complex. Our answers will be complex, but we can only find those answers together with 500 million Europeans.
Let's work together. I'm here to learn from you. I'm looking forward to discuss with you. I would like to hear what you expect from the future of Europe and what you are expecting me to do for you.
Years ago, it was hard to believe that we'll be on this stage together.
I'm here to listen to you very carefully, and I would like to hear about your opinion, how we have to develop the European Union. I'm ready to take your questions.
How can we make Europe more transparent?
We need more content, we need to talk, we need to listen. We need to listen to your concerns and change the system on the basis of your concern.
Bine ați venit, domnule comisar Tibor Navracici, vă rog. Aplauze. Ne bucurăm să vă avem la București pentru acest dialog. Până când se instalează domnul comisar european, aș vrea să vă spun câteva cuvinte despre profilul domnului comisar, care deține acest portofoliu al educației, culturii, tineretului și sportului din 2014. E absolvent de drept, are un doctorat în științe politice, a fost ministru al administrației publice, al justiției, al afacerilor externe. Și înainte ca să începem dialogul nostru, aș vrea să îl invit pe domnul Mircea Dumitru, rectorul Universității din București, cu un mesaj. Vă rog.
Your Excellency, Commissioner Navracici, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, We at the University of Bucharest are very happy and very honored to host the Citizens Dialogue. We are sure that it will be a very important development for the democracy in Romania, and I'm sure that your questions will help a lot the Commission in Bucharest to understand better our concerns, our thoughts, what we want in the future for the youth, for education, for culture, and for all the citizens of this country. So allow me first to say a few words on behalf of the community at the University of Bucharest, of the Senate of the University of Bucharest. The University of Bucharest is fully committed to supporting and promoting through its mission of education, research, and accountability to its stakeholders the European values and ideals which make our union such a strong entity. We wish that our university have a substantial contribution to the development of a strong Europe through the effervescence of our community. Bridging the gaps and overcoming the social and economical inequalities are two of our main concerns, main objectives, not only at European level. Those objectives go beyond the borders of our old continent. Economic gaps are aggravating the inequities in education, and if we don't develop an educational system that offers equal chances to each girl and boy, we will not be able to provide sustainable development to our member states or beyond. Young people need opportunities for good educations and training. They need to be empowered to feel self-confident and committed. Societies need resilient and visionary young people who are educated and active in their communities all over the world. This is why I believe that it is relevant to discuss today, having in view a common agenda across Europe, the principles and the mechanics of a minimum level of investment in education related to each country's GDP for all EU member states. Without a substantial and coherent financial support, without any predictability, the modernization of education and thus the modernization of the member states will fail, and the gaps will constantly increase. This proposal is also stated in the public appeal that our university launched at the end of April. Over 1,100 people signed this appeal and asked firmly for good policy in education and research. I, together with the President of the Senate of the University of Bucharest, Professor Marian Preda, have a mandate to hand over this document to His Excellency, Mr. Tibor Navracsics. We hope to be part of an extended dialogue focused on finding the best solutions. A strong Europe is the Europe open to exchange experience, best practices, sharing of ideas, and why not to economic exchange. The fact that here in Europe we all understand these challenges in a globalized world is to be welcomed. Moreover, the new ways the Erasmus Plus program is going to be emphasized across Europe shows us that the European project is dynamic, oriented towards collaboration, partnerships, and promoting diversity. The University of Bucharest is fully committed to the upcoming project of the European Universities Network, and we believe that by strengthening partnerships between universities, partnerships that aim to promote the quality of education across for all and the high-level research activity, we will be able to contribute to a better and competitive Europe. Europe is more than everything else, a space of shared history, cultures, values, and principles. I believe that we all owe to the next generations reliable programs and processes through which we educate young women and men to show respect to facts, to cultivate tolerance, democratic values, and the rule of law. An awake consciousness and full commitment to citizenship mean a strong nation able to create its own antibodies to the various and inevitable drawbacks. This is why I believe it is crucial that education shape not only good professionals, but also citizens who know their rights and obligations. The University of Bucharest actively assumes this social mission. to be actively involved in the social developments and to build the personality of intellectual, autonomous people. I am very honored to launch the invitation to the European Commission, to the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, to be part in the upcoming debates about education, innovation and development that the University of Bucharest will organize beginning this autumn. Thank you again for being here. Welcome, and I am sure that the dialogue will be very fruitful and beneficial for us. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Vă mulțumesc, domnule rector. Aș fi vrut, înainte să începem dialogul, doar câteva lucruri să precizez despre contextul acestei dezbateri, că suntem în anul european al patrimoniului, că sunt fonduri care să sprijine patrimoniul din partea Uniunii Europene. Anul acesta sunt programate în jur de 70.000 de evenimente la nivel european. De asemenea, aș mai vrea să vorbesc despre această poveste de succes a Uniunii Europene, care e programul Erasmus, care anul trecut a împlinit 30 de ani, și despre importanța pe care o acordă Comisia Europeană acestui program. Există proiectul, propunerea ca în următorul interval 2021-2027 bugetul pentru Erasmus Plus să fie dublat de la 15 miliarde de euro la 30 de miliarde și apoi aș vrea să punctez și imaginea acestei Românii a contrastelor, pentru că vorbim despre Erasmus, despre performanță, despre formare, acest program care a permis unui număr de 9 milioane de oameni să se formeze, să studieze, să predea, să facă voluntariat în alte țară, iar românilor, cifrele arată că în perioada 98-2017 peste 130.000 de români au beneficiat de program, dintre care 80.000 de studenți cu burse Erasmus. Deci, dincolo de formare și performanță, pentru că tot s-a încheiat Târgul Bookfest, aș vrea să amintesc și despre statisticile privind cititul în România. Ultimul barometru de consum cultural arată că 70% dintre români n-au citit o carte în ultimul an. Alte studii mai vechi, Eurostat, puneau românii în coada clasamentului la citit, care e condus de nordici, și asta probabil că are legătură și cu nivelul de analfabetism funcțional. 42% dintre adolescenții noștri sunt analfabeți funcțional, adică nu înțeleg sensul unui text pe care îl citesc și, din nou, România e în fruntea clasamentului în acest sens în Uniunea Europeană. Dar, cum spuneam, contraste, sunt și tinerii care câștigă concursuri internaționale, acceptați la universități de renume și care nu se întorc acasă. Dar sunt sigură că întrebările dumneavoastră vor atinge mult mai multe puncte. Până atunci, o singură precizare, o mulțumire către Europuls. Discuția noastră cu Comisarul European este un preambul la Eurosfat 2018, platforma de dezbateri care începe pe 8 iunie, unde sunteți așteptați, vor fi reprezentanții ai societății civile, decidenți politici, experți. Domnule comisar, pentru început, în absența dumneavoastră, am invitat sala să-și dea cu părerea legat de impactul tehnologiei în Uniunea Europeană, în ce domeniu, și rezultatul arată așa: 31% dintre cei care au răspuns cred că tehnologia va avea cel mai mare impact în Europa, apoi în Europa în educație, apoi în sănătate, destul de apropiat, 26%, apoi în crearea de locuri de muncă, 14% și finanțe. Cum comentați rezultatul?
First, good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for this warm welcome here in Bucharest. Coming from a neighboring country, based on my personal experiences, I think we have a lot in common when we talk about education and when we talk about the role culture can play in a society and how can serve culture, sport, education in bringing together our young people and young people coming from other regions in Europe to build up a stronger community. And yes, this portfolio, my portfolio, and probably I'm the luckiest guy in the European Commission, at least I feel, luckiest when, for instance, a football world championship is approaching and I'm the only one who is entitled to go there, while all the other commissioners are very envy of me and they are just asking tickets or paying high sums for having entrance into the football matches. But even in that portfolio has sometimes less bright sides, and that's the future challenges ahead of education. And we can see here, I totally agree with you, that one of the biggest challenge ahead of education and in the future of education is the unpredictability of the technological development and its influence on schools and on education and on the teaching staff. On schools, because there's a lot of sign that probably the most influential or most important educational activity will happen actually beyond classrooms and not in the classrooms. We have a formal education. We used to think education as an activity which is relevant for a certain age group. That's approximately from 6 up to 23. And a degree in a university flags the end of the school years and the end of the education. But now we can see that there is a very quickly changing labor market, social environment, so that lifelong learning, which is very frequently mentioned but not really respected among decision makers, can be more and more relevant. And when we talk about lifelong learning, it's obviously not, it's obviously an educational activity not limited into classrooms. But we have to use all the opportunities of the informal and non-formal education activities. And that's the point where technology and technological development can enter the picture. For instance, the massive open online courses, which can revolutionize universities. You met some of the American channels in YouTube or in other online platforms as well, which serves as a platform for massive open online courses. And it is a challenge to the university staff. Me too, I'm teaching in the Faculty of Law in Budapest. How to compete with very well-known English-speaking teachers in university, easily accessible for the students. How can we keep our higher education systems competitive in comparison with the English-speaking universities or French-speaking universities or Spanish-speaking universities? Because the universities for us, for nations in Central Europe are not only knowledge factories, but also one of the defenders of the national languages, the national cultures. So universities must play a very important societal role as well. And if we simply surrender to the Anglo-Saxon higher education world or the Neo-Latin or French-speaking higher education world, we might neglect our national language, national tradition. So we have to do more. I think we have to speak in foreign languages, but we have to be very careful to protect our national languages as well. And the technological development can help us in that as well. Not only in learning foreign languages, but also to protect our national languages. We are working on the copyright reform in the European Commission, and now it's in the European Parliament and in the Council. And one of the most sensitive issues of that copyright reform is how to protect small languages, national languages, and how to open copyright regimes to research activities, data mining, for instance, or how can we make copyright regimes more open to the needs of the higher education. So the technological developments, even in that single point, brings a lot of challenges and a lot of novelties. And let me end with a very short remark on the teaching staff, for instance, because technological revolution is probably the biggest challenge for the teaching staff. Is it a familiar situation for you that in a classroom, pupils are often better equipped with digital skills than the teachers? We have an aging population also in the education family. There are member states in the European Union when 30 or 40% of the active teachers will be retired in 10 years. And how can we keep them motivated to upscale their skills and their knowledge addressing the challenges of the contemporary world? So this is a very important issue and one of the hottest issues of contemporary education systems in Europe.
Mulțumesc, domnule comisar, pentru explicații. O să rog acum sala să răspundă la o altă întrebare, dacă sunteți conectați la aplicația Slido. Care sunt, în opinia ta, provocările cu care se confruntă tineretul astăzi? O să avem afișată și întrebarea. Puteți vota. Care sunt, în opinia ta, provocările cu care se confruntă tineretul astăzi? Bun, apar cuvintele cheie. Accesul la sport, finanțare insuficientă, înțeleg că inechitatea din sistemul, din opțiunile pentru piața muncii. Deci principala problemă a tinerilor astăzi ar fi legată de felul în care își găsesc un loc de muncă. Domnule comisar. Deci răspunsurile arată, domnule comisar, că principala problemă a tineretului e legată de felul în care reușește să se integreze pe piața muncii. Vi se pare... Ce spune răspunsul ăsta despre politica Uniunii Europene?
Yes, the education policy at European level has basically two pillars. One is employability, and the other one is democratic citizenship. And I think either of them don't go without the other. So employability is not simply an economic term. Since the 1950s, it's been usually perceived at European level as something which is a part of the single market. And it's about the movement of free movement of people, free movement of capital, free movement of services, and employability will come out as a natural consequence of the economic development and economic cooperation at European level. However, we just witnessed that if you take Greece, for instance, or Spain, Italy, Portugal, the level of youth unemployment was so high that 10 years ago it was the biggest challenge to address those problems at European level. And that's why employability became a part of education policy, a big part of the education policy, how to contribute to raise employability, the level of employability among young people. And our lesson in that area is that we have to emphasize the skill, the more practical part of education. European education systems traditionally have been very good in giving theoretical knowledge. What is missing is the other part of this knowledge, the practical knowledge, the skills, which doesn't mean pushing theoretical knowledge into the background, because we have to preserve what is our advantage. But we have to add skills education in vocational education and training, the so-called dual education, but also in higher education, when universities can develop stronger relations with economic actors, for instance. So universities can be one of the engines of local economic growth, with strong cooperation of the businessman, the business community, and using research and development activities for practical purposes. And it leads us to the employability issue. We have to transform European education systems to make it more skills-oriented. On the other hand, we have to pay more attention to democratic education, democratic citizenship, because without values, young people will not be employable on the labor market. The labor market is not simply a market, but it's also an economic focus point of a democratic society. So fair behavior, a consensus-oriented attitude, a team work, and all these social skills which represents values, the values of a European democratic society, can be very important to make young people employable. That's why employability and access to the labor market, better access to the labor market, are one of the priorities of the European education system.
Mulțumesc. Acum sala, vă rog să puneți întrebări. Așteptăm întrebările dumneavoastră. Vă rog să vă prezentați și să fiți cât mai conciși. Începem în partea dreaptă, acolo, doamna.
Salomea Romanescu este numele meu, sunt profesor în domeniul afacerilor europene. O întrebare pentru domnul comisar, sau mai bine zis o propunere. Mai mulți cercetători din România au ajuns la consens că educația ar trebui să fie factor al unei superputeri soft, iar Europa în viitor sperăm să devină o superputere soft, și în acest context noi am dorit ca educația să devină competență a Uniunii Europene. Deci este o propunere și dacă dumneavoastră considerați că în viitorul apropiat acest lucru va fi fezabil, pentru că alături de competențele tradiționale, cele 5 ale Uniunii Europene, educația, cultura și, de ce nu, drepturile sociale sunt esențiale pentru o entitate politică viitoare. Mulțumesc!
Yes, the European Union is per definitionem a soft power because we have no army, we have no police. What we have is the achievements of the European culture, the nation's culture, but also local communities' culture, and so on and so forth. And we've had a quite impressive development in that area with the help of Federica Mogherini, who is the High Representative in the European Union, and she really embraced the idea of cultural diplomacy and European soft superpower, no, it's soft superpower, not super soft power. And we adopted, I mean, the European Commission adopted a new strategy for the external relations of the EU last year, which put education, sport and culture at the center of the future external relations of the EU. And the first test is the European Year of Cultural Heritage, which we celebrate this year. We have a lot of programs outside Europe, sponsored and organized by our representations and embassies in other continents. And it is very, very successful. You know, that's one of the main attractions of Europe is culture, education, and also sport, because the traditional strongholds are European inventions, universities, for instance, the most popular sports, or the cultural achievements are really very important European things and facts, and this is the results of the efforts of our predecessors. However, there are limits for the unification of those areas. For instance, in cultural policy, I prefer a subsidiarity method, that we have to build a bottom-up structure. If we want to push member states, nations, and local communities to create a homogeneous, unified European culture, we would fail, I think. What we have to do is the Erasmus feeling or Erasmus identity. Data show that Erasmus enriches really young people's lives. They feel more European after their Erasmus term or Erasmus experience than before. And Erasmus can contribute to a development of a European identity which doesn't exclude any other loyalties and identities, national, regional, and so on and so forth. And for me, the European culture is a sum of the community's cultures in Europe, and of course the top league of the best elements of the cultural heritage and our attractiveness. Education is an even more sensitive issue. There is a strong tendency for stronger cooperation at European level in education activities, but there are very sensitive issues. For instance, history teaching or literature or culture are very sensitive national issues. We can dream of a common Hungarian, Romanian history textbook, but practically I think we will face very serious difficulties when we work on that. But on the other hand, for instance, the so-called STEM education, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, can be an excellent opportunity for developing a closer cooperation at European level, because numbers are numbers, either in Ireland or in Romania. 2 is 2. When sometimes politicians say it's not so identical, but basically, when we talk about mathematics or those science issues and science education, we can approach a lot. And that could be a very useful cooperation, because there's a huge pressure coming from the business community in Europe to upscale our education systems. You may know that it's not simply 28 education systems, because for instance in Germany or in Spain, education is of regional competence, which means that we have more than 28, almost 50 education systems in Europe, and it's simply too fragmented for the business community to handle these huge numbers. So we might have a development in STEM education or STEAM education, because some people would like to put art in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics sciences as a horizontal competence. STEM or STEAM education can be a European form of education in the future.
Mergem mai departe cu întrebările. Aici pe mijloc, tânărul. Da, vă rog.
Commissioner, how can the European Commission induce member states to take measures against a possible mass unemployment, given that a strong technological revolution is coming that might leave millions of people unemployed in Europe, and knowing the fact that populism is a strong current in Europe and those people will be the first to swallow the message of those politicians?
We have some direct employment instruments. I'm sure you are familiar with the Youth Guarantee, for instance, or the Youth Initiative, but this is basically up to the member states' government how they use these funds and the European social funds, for instance. And for the future, we try to orientate member states, giving them recommendations for future perspectives. For instance, we just adopted 2 years ago the new European Skills Agenda for education, which gives a list of skills we think relevant for the future. Digital skills, entrepreneurial skills. Those are not the so-called traditional skills, but more horizontal skills, which can be taught in schools either as subjects, for instance, entrepreneurial skills, or as a horizontal skill to put the elements into diverse subjects. Our ambition is to encourage the member states to give at least one entrepreneurial experience during the general education years of the pupils, which means that not only for the students to give an experiment in startups, for instance, but also for upper secondary school students and pupils. It's our ambition to make it normal that the students learn at least two foreign languages beyond their own native mother tongue, and we in the European education area, we would like to put more emphasis on digital skills. We adopted a European digital action plan, which addresses the infrastructural problems of the member states in the digital education. For instance, only 25% of the European classrooms are properly equipped with digital devices. 25%, and we usually think of us Europeans as a cutting-edge economy, while in education we are lagging behind. And we will use all regional and rural development funds to address these infrastructural issues. And of course, we have some recommendation in developing the content, the national curricula, and teachers training to keep teachers upscaled to the needs of the labor market.
Avem o întrebare, am văzut că erați pregătit.
Adrian Socaciu, Institutul Sportiv Român. Ținând cont de concluziile Forumului European al Sportului din Bulgaria de la Sofia 22-23 martie, a datelor statistice Eurostat privind obezitatea și a consumului de medicamente și siguranța Europei, credeți că este necesară o politică de a sportului, a mișcării la nivel european, ținând cont că Comisia Europeană nu se implică în politica națională privind sportul, însă într-o corelare cu sănătatea și cu productivitatea tinerilor și a cetățenilor europei, avem nevoie și de acestea?
Yes, definitely. I am the very first and very proud sports commissioner in the history of the European integration. So I definitely think that we need sport, and there's a saying that the sitting is the new smoking, so I have to stand up, not to smoke anymore. And we adopted last September the so-called Tartu call, which is an open call for healthy lifestyles. And it's a joint exercise initiated by me together with the commissioner responsible for health, Vytenis Andriukaitis, and commissioner responsible for agriculture because of food safety, Phil Hogan. And we would like to give more incentives to the member states' governments to put more emphasis on sport, because only 7% of the Europeans practice at least 5 times a week sport. And it's only 33% who make at least 1 up to 5 sport exercises a week, or 1 up to 4. And 43% of the Europeans never do any exercise in sport. 43, almost half of the Europeans, because there are some people who are exercising once a week, so that's the bridge of the different. But 43%, which means that obesity might be the biggest societal challenge of the future. And it's the situation is even worse when you look at the state of the children, unfortunately. So it's not only sport, but it's also an educational problem. We have to emphasize the role of physical education in general education and in higher education as well. And sport can play an enormous role in social integration, for instance. For me, sport is a part of culture, the broader term of culture. And sport is one of the most efficient meta-verbal form of communication. So if a member state struggles with social integration problems, the most efficient way of integrating marginalized communities or marginalized groups to organize them, sports clubs, grassroots sports clubs, competitions, very peaceful, very efficient way of integration. And that's why I think sport has a huge opportunity in the future. We launched the European Week of Sport 3 years ago. Now we are preparing the 4th edition. And I have a good news for you, because you will be in the first half of next year, the presidency. Huh? That's a pity, because we open the European Week of Sports every year in the rotating presidency country. So now we are preparing for the opening event in Vienna in September 22nd. And in the past 3 years, it developed a very, very successful and very popular event of sport at European level. And I hope it will be very popular also in Romania this year. Thank you.
Mergem mai departe. Doamna din dreapta.
Bună ziua, numele meu este Laura Marin, sunt președinta unei asociații neguvernamentale care luptă împotriva inechității din educație în sistemul românesc și în același timp sunt doctorand în educație în ultimul an. De curând, în spațiul public românesc, se vorbește despre fenomenul Brăila, o procedură prin care școlile se debarasează de copiii care au rezultate slabe la învățătură din diverse motive, se debarasează de ei în preajma testărilor naționale și a examenelor de bacalaureat pentru a nu periclita imaginea școlii. De exemplu, avem o școală în care din 200 de elevi absolvenți de clasa 8-a, 5 sunt înscriși la evaluările naționale anul trecut. Cei 5 au luat în medie nota 7-80 și sunt campionii județului la promovabilitatea la testările naționale. Întrebarea este în felul următor. Am sesizat deja Comisia Europeană și anume Direcția Generală Justice and Consumers. Aș vrea să vă întreb dacă puteți interveni și dumneavoastră și dacă îmi puteți acorda 5 minute cât timp stați în România pentru a vă da și documentele justificative și studiul care stă la baza acestui fenomen. Mulțumesc!
Very short answer, yes, definitely.
Aș vrea să pun acum o întrebare pe care am primit-o prin aplicația Slido. Se referă la ce măsuri se pot lua prin educație contra euroscepticismului. Domnule comisar, ce se poate face?
There is a very simple but misleading answer that we just adopted a recommendation, again, very first time in the history of the European integration, about teaching European values and the history of European integration in schools. It's adopted by the education ministers as well. So there is an opportunity now to introduce the education of the history of the European Union, which, at least for me, doesn't mean the history of Europe. It's very important because there are some people who are advocating the need for teaching a European history, a unified European history in schools. But my experience is that it wouldn't bring good results because some of the small nations will be absolutely wiped out from this large narrative of the European history, and we have to be very sensitive on these issues. So the history of the European integration is a piece of knowledge which is an important part of our past, and through which we can teach basic and fundamental European values the European Union is based upon. And I think it is very important because as it is natural that in the schools in France, in Romania, in Portugal, in Sweden, the national history is taught, I think it's equally important to teach the history of that community which we are part of. So the European Union now is more than simply an economic cooperation without any values or without any cultural meaning. We have to teach those European values which connect us, which make us European. And it's the duty of the schools, it's the duty of the universities to teach those values, because we sometimes face situations when even the values is questioned, but that's definitely the situation, as you can see now at European level, for instance, when we talk about migration and migration policy, then the content and the meaning of the values are very different. The meaning of solidarity, for instance, for an Italian, for a Swede, and for a Hungarian or a Bulgarian are very different. And we have to do more to pull together these diverse interpretations of the values.
Haideți cu alte întrebări. În spate, domnul Duminică?
Mulțumesc tare mult. Acum ceva vreme realizam un studiu împreună cu colegii de la UNICEF care spunea foarte clar că în momentul în care numărul de copii rom crește într-o școală, calitatea școlii respective scade. Poftim? Calitatea educației. Da, calitatea educației oferită copiilor scade. Același lucru se întâmplă și cu alte grupuri. Da, copii cu dizabilități, copii din mediul rural, copii săraci. Întrebarea este cum adresăm echitatea. în următoarea perioadă, astfel încât 42% analfabetism funcțional să rămână așa, un vis urât în România și în alte țări din estul Europei?
Yes, access to education and equity in education is again a big problem. Last year's education training and monitor, which we publish usually in the autumn of a year, and you can find online in the European Commission's homepage, evaluates European education systems exactly from that perspective. So you can find their exact data broken down to member states, and you can compare the situation. Unfortunately, there is a strong correlation between being socially marginalized and low performance in schools. Of course, we have some positive examples for social integration, but those are outstanding and unique experiences. The usual situation is that migrants or refugees in the West European countries and the Roma community, the members of the Roma communities in the East European countries are low performers in schools. And there is a strong tendency toward the discrimination in the education systems. That's why there is an infringement procedure based on the discrimination in school and in other areas of life against the Roma communities, against the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. And it's a constant part of the CVS evaluation in Romania and Bulgaria as well. So it is a problem. We have to address that challenge, but we haven't found so far the efficient way of addressing those challenges. Again, I think it's not only the schools and not only the formal education which can help, but also sport and culture. Because at least but not only for the Roma communities in Eastern Europe, but also for the refugees in the West European countries, sometimes the poor knowledge of the language is a serious difficulty in schools and in classrooms. So culture and sports can help those young people to be integrated without a high-level knowledge of the language, and that could be the first step in the social integration and social inclusion.
Altă întrebare? În spate, acolo, domnul.
Eu, dacă îmi permit, să citesc o întrebare, că este ceva mai
Vă rog, la microfon.
S-aude? S-aude. Aș vrea să-l întreb pe domnul comisar european, pentru că a amintit de promovarea și protejarea limbii naționale, indiferent care este aceasta, că este română, că este maghiară, fiecare popor își protejează și își promovează limba națională, pentru că este parte din identitatea națională a acelui popor. Și atunci aș vrea să-l întreb pe domnul comisar dacă are aceeași preocupație pentru situația dramatică a învățământului în limba maternă a comunității românești din Ungaria, în condițiile în care guvernul ungar nici până acum nu a construit liceul românesc din Budapesta, pe care a promis de foarte mulți ani că îl va construi.
Vă mulțumesc.
Well, I'm not entitled to address member states' minority policies, but accidentally, because I'm a Hungarian citizen, I know quite well. So there is a self-government system in Hungary for the ethnic Romanians, from the local level up to the national level. And there is a spokesperson in the Hungarian parliament for the Romanian minority. So, and the education and minority education can be a state-based form of education, but also a self-government based on education. And there is an elementary school and a high school in Hungary for the Romanians, and they can continue their career path in the universities as well.
Bună ziua și bine ați venit, domnule comisar, la București. Ne bucurăm să vă avem aici. Întrebarea mea este, am citit în ziar că, Comisia Europeană, propunerea Comisiei Europene este de a crește bugetul proiectului programului Creative Europe cu 130 de milioane de euro. Deci dacă calculele mele sunt corecte, e vorba de 25%. La noi în România, din păcate, cultura este subfinanțată și asta este un understatement. Întrebarea mea este ce argumente ați folosit vis-a-vis de colegii dumneavoastră ca să aveți un asemenea succes? Poate și noi reușim să învățăm câte ceva și să creștem și noi bugetul culturii. Eu își propune cu 500%, dar haideți să începem cu 25%. Mulțumesc!
Well, the pivotal point of my argumentation was cohesion. If we want cohesive societies, and again, cohesion, social cohesion, and the level of cohesion of a society is not simply a social category, but it's also an economic category, because the more cohesive a society is, the more competitive we'll be. And if we want cohesive societies in Europe, without social fragmentation, without gaps in education, in social mobility, and so on and so forth, we have to help the people in culture to build up their own career path. And we got a quite clear political mandate from the culture ministers 2 weeks ago in the Culture Council. A Romanian Minister of Culture was also there. And this message was that we have to spend most part of the Creative Europe for artists' mobility. As they called it, an Erasmus for culture. So that means that for the future, Creative Europe will help even more efficiently the mobility of artists or cultural organizers and the joint projects which can give an opportunity for building up a community at European level as well.
Mergem mai departe. Haideți aici în stânga, domnul din rândul 3.
Sorin Costre, Vice Director for International Affairs, University of Bucharest. So this fall, President Macron launched a very interesting concept and a challenge for the European Union. Namely, he talked about university networks. And my question is, what do you know at the level of European Commission about this concept, and how could you explain us better what will be in the near future? Because we are very concerned. The whole idea is very good, but we don't know exactly how we will apply it. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, we are working on that. We are implementing that project. It ran parallelly. With the Macron speech, parallelly there, we were working on the first drafts of the European universities. And now there are 2 working groups working on that. The first one is composed of the representatives of the ministries, education ministries of the member states, and the second one is composed of the main stakeholders of the higher education area, university associations, Coimbra Group, and so on and so forth. And we discussed the first drafts with the education ministers in February, but also in May, and we agreed upon 2 fundamental principles: that European universities must be institutionalized cooperations among European universities which of high quality, so there is a quality standard, and there is a geographical inclusiveness. So we must not be excluded. This part of Europe must not be excluded. European universities must not mean funding the obvious and usual West European university cooperation. Universities from other regions of Europe as well. And I stick to that principle. I push the member states to keep this principle alive, and we will publish the first calls for the application for those European university schemes in the autumn. And hopefully the first European universities will be set up in 1 year. So during the Romanian presidency, probably that will be the big achievement of the education policy at European level.
Mai departe, vă rog, partea dreaptă, nu, acolo în spate, tânărul cu ochelari. Da.
Bună ziua, Alexandru Manda. O singură întrebare, domnule comisar. Strategia Europa 2020 a impus niște ținte de atins pentru statele membre ale Uniunii Europene, pentru România, pentru părăsirea timpurie a școlii, ținta fiind 11,3%. Ultimele date Eurostat ne arată că România acum se află la 18,5%. Întrebarea mea este cum vede Comisia Europeană să reacționeze la adresa statelor membre care nu își ating țintele pe care și le-au asumat pentru Europa 2020. Mulțumesc frumos!
We respond with frustration. We can't do we can't do any more, unfortunately. But yes, Romania is not the only one. There are several countries which are just performing worse in these years, and that's a very frustrating development. While the results in the university attainment, or the proportion of university attainment is better, but the early school droppers is very frustrating, and that leads back us to the problem of Roma, young Roma people, Roma students, because the early droppers are overwhelmingly those young people who are coming from bad social background or more disadvantageous social background.
Mergem mai departe. În dreapta acolo, domnul roșu.
Mr. Tibor Navracsic, I'm assistant professor at the University of Medicine and Pharmacy and a dentist. And I would like to ask you if you would really like to dig very deep to the root of the most problems that you already have acknowledged with us here. You said that basically the EU Commission does not have enough strength and enough instruments to deal with the troubles that are not yet solved. What if we would have a solution, and it's coming back from the health thinking, would you like to have a feedback, then you would really have to encourage a true democracy in the competent authorities in both education, healthcare, youth, and all the other policy stakeholders. So, therefore, I would strongly recommend a directive, at least, a recommendation, but strongly would be, and efficiently would be, highly efficiently would be a directive, which should impose two principles. Maximum 2 mandates during a lifetime in any executive board in any competent authorities across Europe that will encourage the true democracy and a very new, refresh, new thinking. And all the youth here won't be only in that kind of debate, talking and asking you, but also involved in the real European new thinking. And the second principle should be putting in words how many simultaneously position can a person be in both education, healthcare, and the others. Because you are like us, neighboring countries, and you understand perfectly. We still have troubles with the people who think that they are like pharaohs. Speaking about the future, thank you.
I'm sorry, but I have no power for prescribing that. So I would like to, but that's not my job. My powers are strictly circumscribed by the so-called treaties, and in the treaty, it is stated that I'm responsible for education, culture, youth and sport, but I must not intervene into the cultural policy, the education policy, the sports policy of the member states. I can bring some European added value, just for instance Erasmus or Creative Europe, which means that I can launch initiatives which enriches the member states' perspectives. But I'm not entitled to give job descriptions and prescriptions for the citizens of any of the member states, unfortunately.
Domnule comisar, acum o întrebare venită prin aplicația Slido. Ce speranțe aveți, ce moștenire va avea acest an european al patrimoniului? Ce vor simți exact oamenii și ce se va vedea în sectorul cultural?
My hope is that the biggest result of this year will be at local level, that local communities will rediscover their own elements of cultural heritage, a small church or a small castle or a nice house or a noble tradition can be revived, and they can be proud of that, and they can share it online or with the tourists, and we can discover that there's much more in common between us, either in Romania or in Germany or in Portugal, than divides us. Because I think that's the truth. I'm crisscrossing Europe in my commissioner's years, and I can witness it to you that there is a community, a virtual community in Europe, but we are preoccupied with our national differences, which is okay, but we have to find and rediscover our common belongings and our common traditions beyond our specialties and peculiarities.
Mergem mai departe cu sala efervescentă. Acolo, în stânga, doamna.
Lumința Costache, specialist educație la reprezentanța UNICEF în România. În primul rând vreau să vă felicit pentru portofoliul dumneavoastră. Din punctul meu de vedere, dețineți cel mai important portofoliu pentru sustenabilitatea și dezvoltarea Uniunii Europene. Și din această perspectivă aș vrea să vă întreb dacă vizați la nivelul politicilor europene măsuri care să se uite cu precădere la calitatea educației, în primul rând în învățământul preuniversitar. Așa cum am avut ținte pentru creșterea accesului la educație, dar ele cumva din partea unor state membre, inclusiv în România, au vizat mai degrabă măsuri sociale de creșterea accesului și mai puțin măsuri educaționale de creșterea calității. Dacă vă gândiți la niște ținte care să existe în următoarea strategie și care să vizeze calitatea, sau dacă vă gândiți, de exemplu, la niște standarde minime de calitate pe care fiecare stat membru ar trebui să le îndeplinească. Mulțumesc.
We cannot define universal quality standards because European education systems are so diverse. I mean, the structure of teaching the material, there are education systems where the first 4 years are the most important. In other education systems, those are only the years of democratic socialization, and so on and so forth. So there's no level playing field in the structure of the content. But we fund initiatives for improving excellence in education. We fund some reforms, for instance, in Slovenia, to establish points of excellences in schools in the education system, and we fund staff mobility to give the opportunity for teachers to share their experiences, to develop their skills and knowledge, but that's all what we can do.
Mai departe. Vă rog. Primiți un microfon.
I am professor at the Polytechnic University of Bucharest, and I have a question more for Professor Navracis than for an EU Commission. First of all, are you happy with your students? Because I don't know how you talk at this European level, but I am teaching Erasmus students almost from the beginning, and I have, of course, contacts in almost Europe, and everybody almost are aware about the poor quality of our students today. So it seems it's something wrong in this politics, and what is my impression, I don't know, it's a sort of lack of motivation. I mean, money cannot be a motivation. Good laboratories is not enough. Has to be something for a unit Europe to give motivation to our students. I am not waiting to give an answer, but please think a little bit when you are in the airplane to this. Because I am very sure, I don't know how much you teach, or if you have time. Probably you don't have time, but maybe you have good assistant who is teaching instead of you. But this is true, no? Okay. So I am feeling this, and I am feeling this unhappiness in almost all the universities I visited in Europe. And you see, this unhappiness, it might be a sort of root of why our young generation is not so in favor for Europe. Because at least us, we are, in my opinion, more in favor of Europe than young generation. They want to go, to study, to earn money, to have a good position, and then it's end.
Mulțumim, domnule profesor, domnule comisar.
Yeah, very briefly, because I think it's really a long, it can be a long discussion between us. I totally agree with you. But the biggest problem of the education, I think that the solution, the really important solutions, and not the superficial solutions for the problems of education, couldn't be found in education itself. But the problem is in families, because families are falling apart, and students come to the university with such a low level of social knowledge. My mother, who, when she was a pensioner and she attended young pupils to have lunch in a restaurant, and approximately 20 years ago, she told me that there might be a big problem in the Hungarian families because she just noticed that children couldn't handle cutlery anymore, which is typically taught in family. It's not the duty of school to teach how to handle cutlery. And I think that's one part of the problem, that this social fabric behind education, behind the classrooms, which was natural for us and evident for us because we were living in families and we were taught in families for the social skills, is not a given anymore. And the other one is that poor young people have to face now much more attraction outside the education than we had to face. I mean, in our age, we are more or less the same age, so we have the same generational experience. To be well educated was a social ideal, huh? Now, to be an influencer, to be online, to be a rock star, yeah. Yes, and so that's a different world, and we have to find the good language to discuss the problems with them, because I'm sure that we've lost the common language with the online generation. We are offline, they are online, and we don't have the same language. Unfortunately, we don't have the same vocabulary, and we simply don't understand each other, even inside the same nation and in the same community. So I think this is the biggest problem, and all the challenges of the education is just the consequences of this huge social and generational problem.
Mergem mai departe cu sala. Domnul Papadima.
Thank you very much. Liviu Papadima, Vice Rector of the University of Bucharest. Short question about the European discourse. You meant that European authorities cannot interfere in such fields like education, culture, the one you are leading, youth and sport, and this is according to the treaties, we know that. On the other hand, we are told, and some of us even believe that European Union is no longer just a trading union, it's rooted in common values, which are on their turn rooted in education, culture, youth and sport. Isn't that somehow contradictory, apropos frustration?
That's the beauty of my job, to bring some results under such circumstances. And I perceive my job as probably the most political job in the European Commission, because it's easy to be a commissioner who has all the prerogatives and powers to punish member states and to regulate them. But what I have to do is to make coalitions of the willing in every issue, and it is very difficult, but it's a beautiful job. I mean, I have to convince the ministers to progress in the same direction. And we doubled the Erasmus, the budget of Erasmus. We increased significantly the Creative Europe. We just launching the Discover EU initiative. I don't know if you know about that. It's for 18 years old young people to give a free rail ticket to go around Europe. This year we celebrate the European Year of Cultural Heritage, and this is based on the consensus of 28 member states, 28 ministers, and I forged those coalitions. And it is cumbersome sometimes, but it's beautiful if we reach a consensus. So I like it very much.
Și o întrebare venită prin aplicația Slido, apropo de clădirea în care facem dialogul, de starea ei, ce poate face România ca să-și salveze patrimoniul cultural?
It's partly a legal problem. If the national legislation protects efficiently and well the built heritage, it's okay. But it's not really usual in the Central European countries. I know it very well. And on the other hand, it's a problem of funding. And in this particular issue, even the European Commission and our policies can be blameful, unfortunately, because we had an upper threshold of, I think, only 5 or 7% of the national envelopes could be invested in cultural renovation, restoration, and all these projects coming from the structural funds. Now, again, we have a clear mandate from the Council to abolish this threshold and give the opportunity to the Member States to invest more in cultural heritage protection. But it's up to the Member States, it's up to the Council if they adopt this clearance of the barriers.
Mergem mai departe cu sala, vă rog întrebări. În spate, tânărul din picioare.
Whenever there is a deficit in the European Union, what the Commission does almost always, and even the education area is also a good example, is to increase funding. But isn't this too simple of a solution to be effective? Does taking money from member states to give them back to member states really add up to something?
Yeah, that's the situation, but not exactly, because we take away from the money from the member states and we spend it to you. Then that's true. I don't know if you're... That's a Hungarian saying, but I don't know if it's in Romania as well. But if somebody... Okay. So, for instance, Erasmus, which makes you mobile, which gives you the opportunity to go abroad and study, it's funded by the member states. And there is a consensus because the member states just realized that, that there is an added value if they pay in. And it's especially very, very useful for the less rich countries, for instance, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, other countries, because they pay less, but they get more. And that's the added value of the European cooperation. And in education, it can give very positive results.
Mergem mai departe. Acolo în stânga.
Good afternoon, Mr. Navracic. I want to ask you if you think that at the level of the European Union, there should be an agreement between the member states to set a % of the GDP for the education. Thank you.
Very good proposal. I wholeheartedly support it. And usually the situation is that when European education ministers are together and we discuss the problems of education, there is a broad consensus that we have to set a minimum standard of investment. The problem are the finance ministers and the prime ministers. So we have to convince them. That's the first exercise. We haven't been so successful so far. But something is changing in Europe because just as education and culture were put on the top of political agenda, that was a unique situation that, for instance, last November in Gothenburg, in the so-called social summit, the topic of the official lunch was the role of education and culture in strengthening European identity and European societies. And then the European Council adopted a council conclusion on the role of education and culture. And of course, an increasing role at European level will attract more funding. So I think European decision makers just realizing that they have to invest more if they want to have more cohesive societies and more competitive societies. What I usually say that for me, education policy is not simply a social policy. It is a future economic policy, because the level of education you have now will be the level of competitiveness of the future. So, but we have to convince the finance ministers here, but if you help me, we can do.
Mergem mai departe cu doamna din spate, din stânga, din dreapta.
Bună ziua! Politica externă a Uniunii Europene va promova activitățile culturale și sportive ca instrumente esențiale în diplomație. Însă cum vedeți intervenția Uniunii Europene în dezvoltarea culturii și sportului ca pioni importanți în educație, astăzi ele fiind marginalizate în programele școlare? Mulțumesc!
That's a pity, definitely. I think that culture and sport must be a core part of national curricula. We are too much subject-oriented, which means that nobody questions the importance of mathematics or history or literature and so on and so forth. And we socialized our children for handling culture and sport as simply leisure time activities. But I think, as I just said, culture and sport for me, the most important platforms for non-formal education, because those teach us for healthy way of living, for more open attitudes toward societal things, to appreciate living in community, to respect the other individuality. So those are not simply subjects, but forms of attitudes or forms of behavior. And that's why I think we have to draw more attention to the issues of culture and sport in education as well.
Sala mai departe, următoarea întrebare. Nu cred că s-au epuizat. Între timp, aș vrea să vă adresez eu o întrebare, domnule comisar, transmisă prin rețelele de socializare. România e pe locul 1 în Europa la numărul de mame minore, cauza fiind lipsa educației pentru sănătate și educației sexuale din școli, care nu e obligatorie. Cum comentați acest aspect, știind că în Europa 20 de țări au introdus obligativitatea educației sexuale în sistemul de învățământ obligatoriu?
Yes, I think it's a very forward-looking and a very progressive reform, and we have to put it, or we have to encourage the member states to put it into the national curricula, either as a part of the formal education or as an additional forms of education. But I think it is a very important aspect of the citizenship education as well.
Mergem mai departe? Nu? Continui cu întrebările care... Doamna, vă rog.
Bună ziua, sunt Cristina Iurișniții, sunt profesor de limba franceză și sunt actualmente deputat în Comisia de Învățământ a Camerei Deputaților Parlamentului României. Apropo de ceea ce se spunea dineauri, într-adevăr, educația sexuală nu este prezentă în școlile din România. Am depus în Parlament o inițiativă legislativă ca această educație pentru sănătate sexuală să ajungă elevilor noștri măcar o dată la 4 ani. Nu s-a dorit, încă mă lupt cu Ministerul. Am trimis și o adresă oficială pentru reactualizarea programei care este deocamdată la nivel opțional. Este vorba de educația pentru sănătate, care are o programă veche din 2004. Asta am făcut a fost o paranteză, o completare, da. Și acum s-a adresat întrebarea. Suntem într-adevăr în anul patrimoniului, anul european al patrimoniului. Aș informa pe Comisarul European pentru Educație că Franța are o politică educațională extraordinară, mai ales în contextul politic al Brexitului, de promovarea francofoniei și a importanței francofoniei din punct de vedere politic, educațional, de promovarea drepturilor omului și a valorilor europene. Din acest punct de vedere, vreau să vă informez că există între România și Franța un proiect bilateral important, sezonul Franța-România, la saison France-Roumanie, și sunt colectivități teritoriale care lucrează la un parteneriat important, care va avea loc începând simbolic cumva din 1 decembrie 2018, 100 de ani de la Marea Unire, până în 14 iulie, Ziua Națională a Franței. Cum comentați din perspectiva europeană a burselor Erasmus, a plurilingvismului, importanța francofoniei ca o limbă instituțională, o limbă a diplomației și a instituțiilor europene? Mulțumesc.
Well, as for the legal status of the French, it's obviously it's one of the official languages, and the European Commission is one of the working languages. However, it is true that the French is disappearing in the everyday communication of the European institutions, and that's a fact. I think the decisive moment was the Eastern enlargement, when most of the Central and North European countries are English-speaking countries. The second language is the English. And now I just noticed that even from the Latin countries, the English is gaining ground. So I know and I follow the developments in the French language policy and the Francophonie, but it will be an uphill struggle to repopularize French in Europe and making it a lingua franca again.
Sala, încă o întrebare? Tânărul.
Culture is just 2 to 3% of Europe's GDP, but a big part of its identity and raison d'être. Do you think that in trade negotiations, Europe should insist on keeping culture as a protected matter and not part of it, or it should approach culture in the Anglo-Saxon way of a product?
It is a very difficult topic because yes, there are strong advocates of this continental versus Anglo-Saxon or Latin, Neo-Latin versus Germanic cultures. But for me, I simply cannot make distinction between these maps of Europe, cultural maps of Europe. For me, what is important is to meet the expectations of the local communities and the people in culture, to express their wishes, their identity, regardless of big groups or smaller groups or linguistic or cultural affiliations. And what I would like to reach is to give a more or less comprehensive conceptual framework for all these diverse cultures in Europe, which is the unity in diversity, basically. So to give some points of references for the people coming from different cultures, and those points of references which can be identifiable for everybody in Europe.
Vă mulțumesc. Spre finalul acestui dialog aș vrea să vă conectați cu aplicația Slido pentru o nouă întrebare pe care vă supunem atenției. Când auzi expresia Uniunea Europeană, care este primul cuvânt care îți vine în minte? Vă rugăm să ne răspundeți. O să vedem întrebarea și pe ecran. Și apoi apar cuvintele. Primul cuvânt care îți vine în minte când auzi Uniunea Europeană. Câștigă teren unitate și multiculturalism. Da, se pare că așa rămâne. E un răspuns de vis, domnule comisar. Unitate, multiculturalism. Cum comentați? Diversitate a apărut între timp.
Unity in diversity. So that's, I think that's the official slogan of the European Union, and it's reflected very, very well here. I think it is very important to strike a good and sustainable balance between respecting the diverse traditions of the European cultures and at the same time mapping up the meeting points and those points which make us basically similar and relatives in a European community.
Domnule comisar, am văzut întrebări de toate felurile despre sport, educație, cultură, patrimoniu. Care e concluzia dumneavoastră după dialogul nostru?
For me, this discussion show that again there's a common ground for future actions and future common thinking and joint projects. And what is important is being European with respect of each other's differences and using this diversity not as an obstacle but as a source of energy for building up a real, colorful but cohesive community at European level. And this common ground, which we just mapped up in education, in culture, youth and sport, and the thoughts about the problems of these areas, I think it can be a very good engine for this future common thinking.
Văd că a apărut și un cuvânt inedit, pace, în...
Originally, the European integration is a peace project, and I think that's the most important value. Sometimes it's under threat, but we have to keep and we have to protect the peace in Europe. Yes, definitely.
Domnule comisar Navracici, vă mulțumesc pentru explicații, pentru deschidere. Vă mulțumesc tuturor care ați pus întrebări, că v-ați arătat interesați de acest portofoliu minunat și complex al educației, culturii, tineretului și sportului. Și, domnule comisar, dacă sunteți amabili după terminarea dialogului pentru câteva răspunsuri la întrebările presei, dacă puteți rămâne. Vă mulțumesc. Vă mulțumesc tuturor.